the Kevin Durant trade front, it started feeling like maybe he's going to end up staying in Brooklyn and him and Kyrie are going to have to figure something out in that organization. But now we have a little bit of an update from our very own Adrian Wojnarowski. He is reporting that the Nets and the Celtics have engaged in trade talks. Now, we don't have to get too excited yet about this because he also went on to say that the Celtics appear no closer to acquiring Durant than any others in discussions with the Nets. But Boston's ability to include all-star forward Jaylen Brown as a centerpiece in offers does help make the team formidable in its pursuit. What do you make of the news that the Boston Celtics are now in the mix for the KD hunt here?
It is very unique, and I think they're taking a page out of the Golden State Warriors book when they had that 73-win season and lost to LeBron James and the Cleveland Cavaliers being up 3-1 in the finals. They went out and got a Kevin Durant because they knew they needed another guy like that to, I won't say get over the hump because they already had won an NBA championship, but to put them right back in those regards. You look at the Boston Celtics this year in the NBA Finals facing the Golden State Warriors, they were missing a player like a Kevin Durant. But it's kind of ironic, though, because when KD was in Oklahoma City and he lost to the Warriors, I believe it was in the conference finals, you look at this year, he got swept by the Boston Celtics. Now, potentially, he can end up with the Boston Celtics. That's crazy.
That's very KD of him, isn't it?
But it's not his decision. I mean, he'll be getting traded. It's different from the first time because he's actually getting traded this time. But when you look at the Boston Celtics and what they'd be able to give the Brooklyn Nets in return, look at a guy like Jaylen Brown, who played very, very well throughout the playoffs this past year. You look at a guy like Derek White, Grant Williams. Now, Grant Williams was a no-show in the NBA Finals, but throughout that playoff run, he played some decent basketball. They can actually offer the Brooklyn Nets something and not compromise the Brooklyn Nets' future moving forward. So I think when you look at it in those regards, the Boston Celtics isn't a bad place for them.
It's not KD's decision, air quotes, right? But we know Kevin Durant has a lot of pull in wherever the Nets end up sending him. Yes, he's got 4 years left on his deal. Yes, it's pretty inconceivable to think that he's going to sit out for 4 years because he's upset about where he gets traded. However, even if he comes to you and shows up on the court, you don't want a disgruntled superstar on your team. Nobody's signing up for that. Nobody wants to trade away a king's ransom of assets, which is what you're going to have to do to acquire Kevin Durant and then bring Kevin Durant to your organization if he really doesn't want to be there. That seems like a terrible idea. What we do know about where Kevin Durant wants to go is that he wants to go to a contender. And the Boston Celtics are that. They were just in an NBA Finals, and to your point, they needed that extra boost to maybe get over the hump and actually win a title this next time. KD does that. But what I think's interesting, though, about the Boston Celtics entering the conversation, they were the only team in the NBA that I had as a team that shouldn't be interested in Kevin Durant because they built this thing the right way and they have these young stars, these young budding stars, and they have such a young core there in Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown and even Marcus Smart that you're talking about a team that's in the NBA Finals right now with those dudes in their mid-20s, and you're going to go ahead and reverse course, all of a sudden swerve, and you're going to go to Kevin Durant, who's well into his 30s, and yeah, you might get an immediate championship out of it. I get it. But the reason I thought that Boston shouldn't be interested in doing this deal is that Boston's set up for the next 10 years if those guys continue to pan out the way that they've panned out, and Kevin Durant doesn't do that for you for the next 10 years. So I am frankly kind of shocked that now they're in the hunt.
Well, when I look at the Eastern Conference and you look at the Boston Celtics this year, they played the Milwaukee Bucks. I do not believe they get past the Milwaukee Bucks if Chris Middleton is there. They took him to 7 games without Chris Middleton. You look at the Philadelphia 76ers and those guys being able to have an off season in Doc Rivers' system and James Harden coming back with a lot to prove. You look at what they done in free agency-wise. They brought DeAnthony Melton, who's going to come off the bench and be instant offense. You added P.J. Tucker, right? You added Daniel House Jr. They're going to be better as well. So right now, if I'm looking at the Eastern Conference, I have the Milwaukee Bucks and the Philadelphia 76ers fighting it out in the Eastern Conference Finals. Now, if the Boston Celtics get a guy like Kevin Durant, not so fast, my friends. That's what Lee Corso would say on College Game Day. Not so fast, my friends. I would have to put the Boston Celtics right there as the favorite in the Eastern Conference if they get a Kevin Durant.
I don't disagree that they certainly would go to the top of the pack, but they're already at the top of the pack. That's what I don't get about this.
They got to get over the hump, though.
Because
that team out west,
but Jason Tatum is what, 25 years old? I mean, what are we talking about here? So, yeah, like they've got time to get over the hump. Jason Tatum's 24. He's not even 25 yet. And then you're talking about trading away a Jaylen Brown, who is 25, for Kevin Durant in exchange. My guess is they're going to want like a Marcus Smart too, maybe in that deal. And then from the Nets perspective, yes, it's a heck of a deal, and you can match salaries, and Boston certainly has pieces. Now, Woj is reporting that Jason Tatum's off the table. Basically, everybody else may be up for discussion, which that's not surprising. They can match salaries if they're discussing guys like Al Horford. They could throw into the deal, stuff like that. They can make this work. But from the Nets perspective, do they want the draft picks? Or do they want to reload immediately? Because this feels more like a reload immediately if you're playing with the Boston Celtics, but it's not a reload to win you a championship necessarily, right? I mean, is Jaylen Brown winning you a championship next to Ben Simmons? Probably not. So from that perspective, I'm surprised also that this is considered a front-runner deal for the Nets. It, again, though, depends on what philosophy they want to go with here.
But if they do make this trade, the Brooklyn Nets, they'll have a nice young nucleus. Right? So I still think they can contend in the Eastern Conference. Can they get to a title? Probably not, but they're set up for the future. What can't get lost in this whole thing is that Ime Udoka coached Kevin Durant. He was with the Brooklyn Nets. So I'm pretty sure he's going to have some say-so and is putting a bug in people's ear like, hey, let's go get this guy. I know what he's about. I was there with him in Brooklyn at some point. Let's go win a championship with a Kevin Durant.
Yeah, everybody wants Kevin Durant from that perspective, right?
But
and everybody thinks he delivers.
Him, though.
Right.
He was with them in Brooklyn.
And there is that relationship there. And so it's a good landing spot from that perspective. I would see KD wanting to go there. I don't have a problem with that perspective of it. And fine, you could even talk me into the Nets being able to acquire some of those young pieces, especially if you were able to get Jaylen Brown and Marcus Smart in that deal. You can convince me that that's a good deal for Brooklyn. I'm just surprised that Boston wants to be part of this conversation because they have such a young nucleus there. And they're already in the NBA Finals. And they've been on the trajectory. It's like we see them get to the Eastern Conference Finals. We see them get there. They can't get over the hump. Then they get over the hump. Now they're in the NBA Finals. They don't win a championship because they faced a really good Warriors team. They need to get over that hump. But they're developing. That's the trajectory of this young nucleus.
I put it like this. That's just like you got mama's sweet potato pie, and it's only a little piece left on the plate. Or in the pan that somebody cut off and they ate all the pie. It's only a tiny piece. And you taste that pie and you want more. See, the Boston Celtics, they tasted that success. They went to the NBA Finals. Kevin Durant is the whole sweet potato pie. They want all of it, Amber.
They want the whole pie, which I understand. But if you get the whole pie now, you might be mortgaging the whole pie for the next 10 years. Like, do you want 10 years of pie?
I want to win
Or do you want 2 years of pie? Because that's what we're talking about.
I want to win now. I want a championship.
A bird in the hand, right? A bird in the hand, as Grandma would say. So we will be unpacking this, of course, all show long. Plenty more to get to. But coming up next, in the aftermath of Davante Adams heading to Vegas, a lot of talk was about Adams' absence in Green Bay. How much is Adams going to actually miss the reigning MVP, Aaron Rodgers? That's next. This is Keyshawn, J. Will, and Max.
Keyshawn, J.